when we first started our podcast, we had to get like probably 3 or 4 different websites and services going at once to record it, to edit it, to host it, and then have it approved through iTunes. And now we use Anchor by Spotify, where it's just a one-stop shop where you can record, edit your podcast, and when you distribute it, it'll go to all the platforms. So it's just everything right in one place. And the best thing is it's totally free. So if you want to get started, if you're on the fence about starting a podcast, or if you have a podcast and you want to make it simpler, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we bring the mind, body, and gym together so you can improve your health, increase performance, and live your best life. For more information, visit thinkfitnesslife.com. Here are your hosts, Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie.
And welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast, mindset, exercise, and nutrition with yours truly, Matt Gluckman, and your co-host, Eric Menchie, over there in Boston. How you doing, Eric?
We're doing good, man.
Alive and well. Today, we are talking about machines, functional or not functional. What's your first take, Eric?
Training machines. They've been around for a while. My first take, if you ask me that cold, not functional.
Okay.
Not the most functional things in the gym setting. Now, if it's the only thing that you have, go down to someone's basement and they got a Bowflex machine. Am I going to say you can't use that because it's not functional? No. If that's what someone has in their basement and they have a Bowflex machine that can do 15 different exercises and that's their mode of physical activity, I'm all for it. But if we are the person who goes to the gym and is looking for optimal movement, or you're that person who does have a Bowflex, then you're going to want to keep listening because there's other things you're going to want to do in your program to get benefits out of it. Motor skill benefits, neurological benefits, posture, position, structural benefits from it by not using machines. And that's where we're going to dive into today. Is with training machines comes a lot of good movements, a lot of good exercises, but the same thing, we are taking things away from the body when we start using some of these machines.
Yeah, like just in our kind of pre-recording chat, just talking about how machines were equivalent to putting the bumpers up in a bowling alley, where it's not necessarily going to help you learn and perform by making the mistakes of being out of balance, so to speak, letting that ball go into the gutter. But it has its time and place if you're someone who's coming back from like an intense injury or a surgery and you need that extra stability just for the time being. But yeah, in reality, the bumpers are going to just make your score chart look a little bit better. And same with machines, they may just only make a muscle look a little bit better in theory, because you're still not stimulating your central nervous system enough to overload it to make that adaptation. But you're feeling, it's almost like it's giving you that mind muscle connection, because it's single layered. You know that when you're sitting on a bicep curl machine that you're just working your bicep up and down, but yeah, you're not having to work any of that stability. You're cutting out your Z axis, so to speak.
And that's huge. Because once you're now it's true isolating a joint, right? When we talk about isolation exercises, or let's take a bodybuilding exercise, we've done a standing bicep curl, right? You're not really isolating just your bicep on that. But when you do get on a seated bicep machine that has a pad underneath the back of your arms, we are truly putting our shoulder in one position, we're putting our elbow in one position, and we're now moving through flexion and extension. We're truly isolating that muscle and putting a joint in a quasi-isometric position, which is going to lead to that being the sole mover. The problem with that is once you get locked into that position, or how the machine locks you into certain positions, you are now taking away the antagonist and agonist muscles. So the muscles that need to be worked to stabilize the joints, whether front side, back side, left side, right side, these muscles need to stabilize the joint, and you're taking those muscles jobs away by automatically stabilizing it with a machine. So what Matt's referring to here is when you do use machines, we do lose the sense of stability through joints. So we lose that proprioceptive process of other muscles trying to stabilize joints as one muscle contracts or multiple groups of muscles contract.
Yeah, you're like separating versus integrating. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're exercising, ideally everything that you're doing is functional. And if you are exercising, everything is functional.
Right.
But then you go to sit down in a machine that makes you more robotic in nature, and you're intentionally separating things,
Yeah.
and not necessarily for the benefit of your entire system, solely for the benefit of just that single layered portion of that muscle group.
And it's multiple things we can go from here. And with that, with you're not using the full system, if you're someone who's trying to lose weight or decrease body fat, you're going to want to use the full system. You're going to want to tax the body to use a higher metabolic rate to accomplish these tasks and use more energy. Sitting at a machine is not going to do this. It's going to really just put it into a small category, small muscle group. You're not really challenging the body at all in that case. If you're an athlete, big no for me on this side, because if you're an athlete and you need to be up and running and cutting and jumping, taking away neuromuscular firing patterns by sitting in machines and only allowing certain patterns to go is not optimal. And I'll even translate to that into general population or just your average person who goes to the gym. We are up moving around all the time. We're humans. We walk. Sometimes we run, we sit, we stand, we bend over, tie our shoes, we pick kids up. We do all this stuff. Those are complex motor patterns, meaning that once your brain decides it's going to do that, the body needs to send a signal and fire all kinds of muscles to stabilize, to move, to turn, to twist, to torque, to flex, to extend, just to accomplish a motor task or a movement. And when we use machines, we can diminish that firing rate. So we now create a new pathway to get that job done. So when it comes to maybe bending over, picking up a kid or a grandkid, someone gets injured that way because their muscles aren't used to firing in certain patterns. And this is where, especially for the athlete, is not going to translate over. Yes, you can get strong on machines, but that might not be helping you with sprinting speed and injury prevention, because on a squat, lunge, or anything more dynamic, free weight, your body's learning how to function properly against gravity.
Because
Therefore, having the correct motor pattern to create stability and safety through your body. And I think that's a big thing with machines is we're taking away the safety of stability in the body and creating a different pattern of function to train a muscle. But as we know, we're not in the business of just training one muscle at a time. The system is all integrated.
And especially if you're an athlete or somebody who just likes to perform athletic activities like biking or skiing or whatever, trail running, the whole idea is that you're training better instincts. So if you take away those layers of the muscle and take away those different systems, you're actually just stunting your ability to perform any other activity. So it's like literally like law of specificity. If you're training for an event that's a 5K or something, and you decide that you're just going to walk on a treadmill in perfectly temperate climates like 70-degree temperature, you're never going to train your system to handle that load or balance or handle different terrains up and down, and you're never really going to be getting your brain online to help you create those adaptations in your body. So yeah, I think we've kind of gone around the list here of why certain goals shouldn't use machines, but I think we can just go right back to what individual would benefit from a machine. And yeah, we said that specific scenario of injury rehab, or because a lot of times bodybuilders are working on how the muscle looks at a flex position. So they might work like the peak of the bicep. So they're going to sit there and shorten the range of motion because they're literally just trying to get one aspect out of that machine to help a muscle grow and develop. But at the same time, that bodybuilder is also done barbell work that day. They've already done dumbbell work that day. They've done machine work that day. So by the end, they're only worried about that like a little aesthetic layer, and they have the sleep, probably the synthetic hormone profile, and the nutrition to back up getting the adaptations from it. But your general population doesn't have those variables lined up for them to really see the most amount of benefits from machines. So yeah, 9 times out of 10, you should be off the machines. Those are, I think they had their purpose back in the day when people just didn't know how to work different muscle groups or how to perform different exercises. And it was like a cheat sheet, right? You can look at this machine, you can see how the movement pattern's clearly done. There's really no way around it. But then you could look at that and get an idea and say, how can I replicate that with a barbell? How can I replicate that with a dumbbell? How can I replicate that with body weight? And to the point where that's the only thing you have access to. Hey, you might want to get a little creative. Maybe you do a couple body weight push-ups before you get on a chest press machine, or you do a couple squats before you get on the leg press machine. That way you've kind of primed your system and you've primed the different layers of the muscle and the joints and the stability and your brain to, read the proprioception of how to balance itself in space. And then you get on the machine to push load. So yeah, just to sum it up, I really don't think machines have much of a place except for maybe the scrapyard. Be very valuable.
Yeah, and that's at the end of a workout, if you want to get some more biceps and you're hitting a seated bicep curl, it's not the end of the world. But if we're coming from a point where you step in the gym, you warm up, and the first thing you're going to hit is a, leg press or a, seated hammer bench press.
Just hop
I'm not
right
against
in.
them. I've used them before. I like them. They're just not my go-to for strength because there's other movements that are more beneficial and more benefit, especially when it comes to the lower body. Anything seated, leg extension, all that stuff. It's not optimal. The lower body needs to function multi joint wise, right? And multi muscular chain wise as well. So you can't really just sit there and isolate quads on a leg extension and you'll get strong, you'll develop muscles, but it's not optimal for function. And machines were really designed and invented for rehab settings. How to figure out how to train muscles of injured soldiers, of injured people coming back from war. And then it did become popular as the world of physical activity and exercise grew. People were starting to say, how can I make a machine to get this done? How can I make a machine to get that done? And I don't think it was inherently done in a malicious way, right? People just finding out an easy way to grow, like Matt said, especially in the bodybuilding industry, right? You go back and watch the old Arnold and Lou videos, you're going to see them hammering away on machines. Now, when we talk machines, we're talking about the seated machines, the ones where you sit down. Maybe back in the day, remember you got the seatbelt, you can buckle yourself into the machines, the old Nautilus machines. A lot of times you see these in the gyms built as circuits. Now, on the other flip side, so those are your non-functional machines. As much as we don't like the word functional training, kind of got to use it here. But on the flip side, I don't want people to get confused is with functional resistance machines such as cables and pulleys. Now, I think these definitely have a place. And these are very beneficial because now you can start changing heights, levels, grips, bars, and different movements with pulley systems.
Yeah. And it's a different type of resistance, right? Because you're getting the 3 layers still, especially on a cable. You're still getting the stability side of things. But I think it's safe to say that most of our listeners are more of the types of individuals looking for not only just physical benefits from exercise, but a lot of mental benefits from exercise. And they're a smarter type athlete. And it's the same way that if you were to hop on the treadmill or you were going to go into a big lifting day and you just we're listening to a phone call or you're reading a book, your brain's not really in it. You're not really present and you're not going to get the most out of it. And it's the same thing with your activity choice. So if you choose to do one of those fixed movement machines, which, yeah, to be specific, like Eric said, it wouldn't be like a cable tower. It'd be one of those plate loading machines, or it might have like a little metal rod to adjust the weight, but it's still on like a pulley system that only has a fixed area that you can hinge on, right? Whether it be a leg extension, a seated chest press, a seated row, a seated leg press itself. A big part of that is, again, eliminating all the systems of the brain that need to work together so that you can perform. So they are in way easier. No matter how much weight you're pushing, they are going to be easier on your system because your brain doesn't have to work that hard to critically think, to balance, to figure out which muscles to use up and down the chain. And because of that, you're not going to get a lot of the major benefits that come from exercise, like improving your higher thinking, improving cognition, improving memory, and improving critical thinking. All this stuff, these are all transferable skills that come from exercising and weightlifting. And I think you do yourself a disservice if you're going in as like an ego lifter. And I see a lot of guys do this where they just can't get out of the mindset that they need to push something heavy, even if they have spinal fusions or stenosis or things that really shouldn't be in a heavy load setting and should be doing more body weight stuff on the ground. They'll have this desire to, like, oh, I pushed 150 on the leg press last week, I need to push the 170. And a lot of those times, those weight stacks on those machines that already come with the weight on it, they're using the pin in and out, it'll even say on it, like, number not indicative of weight. So it's just a number, and it's just all relative. And it's just, I think, a mental benefit that comes from exercising. And I think, like we've said before, it has its place, but I think you're stunting yourself and you're stunting your body's ability to create adaptations. And I don't recommend machines to anybody in any program. And if it's the only thing you got to work with, then we'll get creative. But yeah, I think I've nailed that. I've put that nail into the coffin for sure.
And it doesn't translate over, correct? So the biggest one is a leg press and a squat. A lot of people think it translates over, but it does not. And I've seen and had this conversation with many people before that you can't use that as a baseline. Like, if you're leg pressing 300, your squat's not going to be 300 because you're using completely different positions and patterns when a load is on your back or front in an upright position, rather than more you can load the hips. And you're totally right on this. It's not just the exercise benefit alone from it, but it's the neurological benefit alone from this. And I think that is more important than anything. Yeah, without machines, you're going to get probably more caloric expenditure, more metabolism going, more benefit. But the neurological processing of motor patterning in cortical patterns is the most important, because you're teaching your brain a new process. If you don't use machines, if you use machines, it's like the bowling alley analogy. It's easy. You know that you roll that ball straight down that alley or to the sides, it's still going to hit the pins no matter what. You might not hit all of them, but you're going to hit a pin no matter what. Where if you take those rails down, you might miss pins completely. Same thing in exercise. Are we going for certain training adaptations or motor patterning that when you need to go do a sport, your activity, or chase your kid, and you don't have that available to you, what's your brain going to do? It's going to figure out how to complete that task. Could risk injury, pain, anything along that list. On the other side with that, we also get brain development with more challenging, complex movements, right? Upright, free weights, rotation stuff. That gives the brain a different learning curve, and it actually can help build more neurons, more motor patterning, more at the neuromuscular junction.
Yeah. Anything that's going to help you learn while you're performing, something that's going to challenge your system with the balance and stability side of things, with the aerobic system involvement. I think that also is a factor. It's much easier to break a sweat without machine lifting, and anything that's much more variable in nature, whether it's on the ground, whether it's like, I would even go as far to say that the machines to weightlifting are similar to a treadmill running versus trail running. How much
Agreed.
more is your system going to learn on a trail, with the ups and downs, the twists and turns, and the different climates and everything, your vestibular system's processing versus being on just basically like a hamster wheel.
What you ever
And
been? I'm sure you've heard this before. So people are like, oh, I can run this on the treadmill, right? Whatever their mile time is, or a couple miles, and they go outside, and the numbers are completely different.
yeah, they don't
And they're like, oh,
correlate.
why? Well, because you're inside, you're on a controlled environment, you're on a certain belt that's never going to change. Outside, it is a different world. Each foot contact could be a slightly higher, lower, slanted, different than above. So then your body's got to react completely different to that contact than it does on a completely level treadmill. And
Yeah.
you're now running in space. A treadmill like bumper, like, kind of confines someone to like a straight path. They can't. You get them outside, they can all over the place. Huge difference.
It's the good, better, best scenario,
Yeah.
right? Like sure, if you're not working out, machines are good.
Mhm.
But is there something better? Absolutely. And is there a best? Absolutely. And the same thing, yeah. So I think that's a good way to think about it, is good, better, best. Like what, and you take this with you if you find yourself injured from something over the weekend or whatever happened. Um, if you can't perform something, what could you do that could be able to get your work in, but not going to cause more injury or prevent you from getting back out there pain free again? So it's the good, better, best scenario. I think it's a really good way to think about it in terms of, can I be doing something better than this machine right now? Or is this all I can handle right now because, one, it's all I have in my house, or two, it's the only space available at the gym right now, or three, I'm injured, and if I do something without this machine, then it's going to cause me more injury.
So I like where you went there, and that was kind of my next place to go, is injuries in machines. So yes, if you're injured, you might want to reduce the upright activity or the weighted activity demands, but sometimes machines might not be the best thing if you're injured, depending on the machine. These normal built Nautilus, Life Fitness, whatever brand they are, machines are built and designed in certain ways. Over the years, they've designed certain cams that the cables run on or the belts run on to make it more advantageous at a certain point of the contraction, right? And these cams don't fit everyone, right? It's just like your standard chair. Your standard chair or couch is built for the average human being, 5'8", 5'9". Cams are built modeled off of someone who they were doing a lab test on. So if you're, have long arms, that bicep curl might be way different than if you have shorter arms. If you're tall, short, it all changes because of position. With that, also creates tension at a specific position of joints. And if you're someone who's injured, you need to be careful with machines, because a lot of machines start at zero velocity. They start at a dead stop. So there's no real eccentric or lowering preload onto the system before you complete the concentric. Would you agree? Like most machines, you have to do a
Yeah.
concentric first, and then the second half of the rep is the eccentric.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like
So
the only thing I can think that's similar to that is like a deadlift. Your standard deadlift
Exactly.
is similar in that way.
So now you have to overcome the weight from a zero inertia movement. That can be a lot, especially when people load the pins on the machine and they grind through that first one just to get it up. That can put a lot of stress on the joint that you're working, right? If it's a knee extension, it can put a lot of pressure and joint and torque at the knees. If it's the hamstring machine, hamstring curl, same thing. You can really jack your hamstrings up trying to overcome that much force. The other big one I've seen and I've used before and I'm sure you have, is the pec deck, right? It kind of starts behind
Hmm.
you, right? People think, oh, if I get more range of motion, and then that first one you have to pull through probably 2 to 3 inches of a position where it might not be optimal for load at that shoulder joint. So if you're someone who is using machines that is injured, just know that you need to start lighter on the lighter side on of the force and be able to feel those muscles contract. They're not still like grind away at heavy weights. Get the muscle to do what it wants to do, contract, no pain, and then move on to more upright activities. So I think that's a big thing. And a lot of people get confused. And it's tough with machines, at home machines or at the gym, is they are starting from this no movement, and you have to really overcome the force on it. And I've been there. I put weight on a machine and I'm like, all right, I'm pushing the first one up. I get there. And then the next couple I'm fine. I'm like, oh, I just really had to load my system to understand the tension and what to produce. But other than that, I think you're spot on with machines. And if there's one person who does have a machine at home, balance your programming out. Put some machine work paired with a floor or freestanding activity, even if it's body weight, because you can now start to offset the balance and help the brain understand some more stability aspects of it. Then you go back to the machine. So you're not always constantly just using one method.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to say real quick with injuries is I've seen it a lot where people get injured and then there's like a little bit of an imbalance in the way that like their calves look or their quads look, and they hit machines because they think that that's what they need to do is that's what's going to help them rehab, is getting the muscles to look the same again, and that's not the case. The idea is getting them to function, and again, we don't like that word, but to do their job in the specific scenario that you need them to do. That's what's going to strengthen them to get you back out of that rehab position. So if you reverse engineer it, you say, okay, I had this injury. What do I need to get out of this leg again? Okay, I need to be able to stabilize on this leg. I need to be able to walk on this leg. Obviously, I need to be able to jog on this leg. I want to be able to mountain bike again. I want to be able to ski again. Well, then you need to really work in a lot of stability strength. And you're only going to do that in like a single leg apparatus or a single leg setup where you're not having really too much help. So again, it's okay to start with the machine, but like Menchie said, try to couple it in with maybe some single leg work. I'm using that example, but use like some single leg work for maybe like a single leg RDL, a single leg squat, a lateral front footed elevated squat, front foot elevated reverse lunge. Like there are so many ways to work the leg or work different body parts so that they can work together. The whole idea is you're integrating the system together, whether like we said, the one goal that you could disregard what we're saying is just the strict bodybuilder. You're a professional bodybuilder. Sure, go on, use machines.
Because we know you're doing other stuff already. You're
Right,
doing the
exactly.
lunges and all that jazz.
But everyone else, the idea is to train better instincts. So you're not going to do that on a machine where you're eliminating your body's incorporation of all these other systems. So get your brain working. And I think the best place now is to give some tips on where to begin. If you're someone who had only machine workouts, I think the first place to start is, what are you going to do differently when you get into the gym the next day? And I'd say the majority of machine goers or users are that person that you were joking about before, where they roll out of bed, drive to the gym, put their stuff in their locker, and then just go right to the first machine. So like they skip the warm up aspect. Get your body online, get your system online, spend 5-10 minutes on the ground, do some glute bridges, do some dead bug, warm up your core, warm up your breathing, warm up your body's neuromuscular connection. As much as the warm up is raising your core body temperature, it's also getting your brain online so that the lights are on and no one's home. So you don't run into that scenario. So start with a warm up, make it specific to what you're trying to get through that day, work through all ranges of motion of upper body and lower body movements, get the core online first because everything's going to attach to the core, and then start with just some body weight stuff. Maybe use a dowel. You don't have to jump right into a barbell. You don't have to jump right into, using dumbbells right away, but just see how you do with a couple rounds of what you were doing on the machines. but body weight first, and then figure out how to increase the load, so to speak, or increase the tension from there.
And kind of where I would start first with that is with lower body, right? Like you were talking about those lower body exercises. If someone is used to doing these lower body machines, that's the first thing that needs to be switched, because we are 4 locomotive human beings. We need to learn how to pattern ourselves to walk. That means we need to pattern the ankle, the knee, and the hip to all move and work at the same time. You can keep your upper body strengthened for now on the machines if you want. The lower body has to come into some sort of free weight standing exercises, whether that's squats, lunges, whatever Matt said earlier. That I think is a huge place to start, number one. And I know a lot of people don't want to go there because they don't want to train legs like that, but that is the optimal way to train legs, hips, and even core strength and get proper function out of that. Lower body machines and leg work on machines is, in my book, useless for neural patterning for upright activities. So that's where I would start with a lot of people. And then eventually
Lower body, yeah.
And then eventually get away. But I think a lot of people for the upper body, they use it as assistance, right? Because they want a bench. They want a dumbbell, bench, because it's easy, because you're already kind of supported on a bench. So you do these upper body machines. It's helping them get stronger in the other things. And yes, some people will go straight to machines for the upper body. If those people are listening, you might want to start going benches, push-ups, inclines, all that stuff first. But I think when it comes to a lot of machines is people substitute the lower body and the abs with machines rather than trying to do the hard stabilizing multiplanar work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and then they have a weak core, right? And then that can lead them to further injury later down the line, or just bad posture, or even just mild pains throughout the day from being in awkward positions because your body can't support them appropriately, and your body has to create compensations.
Right, and especially for I think one of the big group of machines that I'm way against is the core training, the ab training machines. Because now they're locking you in just one plane, right? Oh, if you want to do a seated ab crunch, we're just working sagittal plane. If we do a seated rotation, we can work rotation. But I think what a lot of people, and they don't know, and this is why we're here, is the body works in a multiplanar facet. We have muscle fibers going in all different directions, up and down, oblique, side to side, across. And that's how muscles fire and pattern along those fiber lengths. And they all function together. It's not like you can just do, I'm just going to do a crunch, so I'm just using my rectus abdominis. Like, that's not the case, because the obliques have to work too to stabilize the rib cage and everything else underneath it. So a lot of those machines that really get you locked in certain positions aren't training the core functionally. And I hate that word, but it's true. The core is not going to function properly if you're just using those machines and you're used to that. This is where our cable pulley system or cable stack comes in, where you can have more of a functional ranges of motion. You can work payloft presses, rotation, chops, lifts. This is going to provide a better benefit for your overall functional system than anything. And that's what I do for most of my abdominal core training. It's all off of pulley system or bands where it's rotational aspects built in with stabilization.
Well, I think that about wraps up our podcast on machines, functional versus non-functional. And if you're looking for more information, you can visit thinkfitnesslife.com. We have a lot of online programs that we have incorporated into people's lives and schedules, just depending on your goals and your previous exercise history. And if you're looking for assistance on where to get started, you can sign up for a free consultation. We'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction and get you on a get started program free of charge, because we know that health is the most important thing. That's what we're trying to do, making changes one person at a time. That's how much we can handle.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.